nervous because I'm here now.
Hey guys, welcome into another episode of 410 Sports Talk. I'm James Haskell, along with my co-host Glenn Martin, and new friend of the show, a guest of the show, Dave Sturchio from the Cowboys Wire, and a host of Jersey Boys Pod. Make sure you go check that out. Dave, thanks for coming on the show, man.
Oh, thank you guys for having me, man. KD Drummond is a fantastic editor over there, and as soon as he pitched this to me, I was like, yeah, I'm totally on board.
That's awesome. Yeah, well, once again, we appreciate it. We're really excited to dig into this game that has been rescheduled, of course, and hopefully we stay on track.
Yeah.
The news is breaking daily, but hopefully things will calm down and we can get back to football. But Glenn, I'll let you go ahead and kick it off.
All right. Well, Dave, thanks again for coming on with us. And I'm glad we had somebody on that is an expert in all things Cowboys, because we're all the way here on the East Coast. And I got a lot of questions about the Cowboys because they're America's team, right? I mean, you gotta have lots of questions. So earlier this season, there were some anonymous players, quote unquote, that questioned Coach McCarthy and the rest of his staff to their coaching ability. I know this is his first year there. It's been a crazy year for him. But what's your take so far on McCarthy as the head coach, and what are the early feelings about McCarthy around Dallas?
Well, to be honest with you, the Mike McCarthy hire was fun at first. You're thinking new face, the Jason Garrett era being over, just a refresher, starting over. It was exciting at first, and when he first came on, obviously, the problem is you have to really consider the season of what we're all dealing with as a country. He had no preseason. He had no training camp. He had just virtual meetings. It was hard to get his flavor instilled on the Dallas Cowboys right away. But from what I saw, from at least from the training camp that we all saw standpoint, I would say that the Cowboys were more than prepared. On paper, you look at that roster up and down, and Mike McCarthy was inheriting a better team than he's ever had, talent wise. Unfortunately, like the season started the way it was. We had that watermelon kick game where we thought like, oh my God, that's it's like a team of destiny almost for Mike McCarthy to win a game like that.
Yeah.
But then after that, it just kind of went downhill, and then Dak Prescott. So it's very hard to judge Mike McCarthy in the early going. But now the pulse around what I'm gathering and what people are starting to kind of whisper is this a one and done kind of deal? Is this, is this a Jerry Jones, like, can't admit to his flaws? Jerry Jones is a prideful guy. The Jones family, the entire organization, very full of pride. So they're probably not willing to, kind of concede on all of this already and say like, all right, we made the wrong decision. Let's move on. I think it's going to be very telling the next couple weeks how they round out the season to see if this team fights for Mike McCarthy or this team just kind of lays over, kind of dies out. And then, the draft experts of the world are going to start thinking, okay, who do we grab? I, for one, think that the team is going to rally around Mike McCarthy. The last time they came off a bye like this, because technically this is like their second bye with all the schedule changes. The last time they came off a bye like this, they played very well in Minnesota and they responded. So they're coming off another mini bye. So I guess I can't say optimistic, but I guess it's more like let's wait and see.
Yeah, now don't tell any Steelers fans that the Dallas Cowboys got 2 byes. They might cry another river about it. But I'm still sour about losing. But anyway, and so I want to, we talked about coach. I want to get into Dak, of course. He's not on the field right now, but a very fluid situation when it comes to his contract. He's on the exclusive franchise tag. Mm-hmm. So what do you think happens in this offseason? And how do you see that playing out moving forward?
I think that the Joneses have instilled in Cowboy Nation and everybody that would listen that Dak is their guy. I firmly believe it based off of the sources that I'm at least close with, or at least read up on more than anybody else. I would say that Dak Prescott gets his long-term deal. Unfortunately, maybe they hold this injury over him and say like, okay, you're coming off an ankle. Are we going to franchise you again? Are they prepared to pay that massive franchise tag? I mean, why would you? So like financially it makes zero sense. So will they do it? I don't think so. I think something gets done. But Dak is the guy. If I see one more mock draft that says like Dallas trades up and let's see if we can get the second pick and Justin Fields and yada yada, I'm like, I don't want to hear any of this nonsense anymore. I think it's Dak's team. I just saw an interview with him today. He's, of course, the way he is, he's ahead of schedule, and he's working hard to get back on the field. And he even said, my team needs me. You know what I mean? And it's, I mean, look, it's pretty apparent.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. One thing I can say about a quarterback, if you have a known commodity, that's so much different than other positions where like you value that so high, because any of those guys come out of the draft and just bust, and then where are you?
I've been beating that horse for a long time. I said, I'd much rather have the guy we know than some uncertainty. I mean, we've all seen the Jamarcus Russells of the world. You know what I mean? Like the Ryan Leafs. Like these guys are all touted as being the next big thing, and then they just stink up the joint in the NFL, and it's just not fair.
Just ask the Browns how easy it is to find a quarterback.
Right. They've been searching for literally like 3 decades.
Yes.
And they still don't have one.
Jimmy, I was gonna say, if you ask Jimmy, they still don't have one.
Listen, there are moments where I'm just like, wow, this guy's really good, and then like there are moments like, wow, this guy shouldn't be playing in the NFL.
Yeah, he's an interesting one, old Baker. But I got to know about Jerry Jones' actual, like, I want to know the power structure there. Like, is Jerry Jones the final call on everything from any hire to any signing? What role does Steven play? Like, what's the power structure look like?
I think what you're seeing is that it shifted in, I believe it was 2014, if I'm not mistaken. It might have been 2014. Zach Martin was drafted by the Dallas Cowboys as opposed to Johnny Manziel.
Right.
That right there was the shift in power, because Jerry Jones was all about Mr. Manziel and just selling jerseys and all that nonsense. I think around that time, it shifted just a little bit, and I think Steven is more, nuts and bolts with the numbers, and I think Jerry, yes, I think he has to have the final say. I don't think they were willing to make the same mistake twice when it comes to drafting that receiver when he falls in your lap, like Randy Moss did back in 98, and then you have, CeeDee Lamb fall in your lap. Jerry was like, I don't care what you say. We are not messing this up again. So I think the ranking system is more the more authentic and the more, just more involved guy, I believe, would be Steven. Jerry's got a lot on his plate. He does so much, you know what I mean? So there are a lot of people saying, can you just fire yourself just a little bit, just kind of turn it over completely. And I don't know if he will. Like I said, the Joneses are very full of pride, so it remains to be seen. But I think the last call will be made by Jerry, but there's a lot of influence by Steven.
Is there? I wonder, would Jones give up any amount of money to get one more ring?
Well, the problem is in 95, I believe he went on record and sold his soul to the devil. He said, just give me one more. That's all I want. And then that's it. And I'm 35 years old. So I've been, I was 10 when that happened. So I've been waiting 25 years like the rest of us. You know what I mean? So I think that would he sell his soul again and pay anything? I think he would at this point, because the problem is there's a lot of Cowboy fans and people around the organization that might just think that he's just the most successful. I mean, you've seen Forbes. They're the most successful franchise in sports. And I think he's accomplished that. And I think he just needs to kind of say, all right, you know what? Like we all made the joke at draft time, yacht Jerry Jones on his yacht drafted the best he's ever drafted. So just stay out of it.
Right. Right. You gotta, the yacht was really just a scheme to distract him. Steven's there like, hey, Dad, buy this one with the, this and that.
Look at that motor over there, Dad.
Yeah. Exactly. It's like you do with a young child.
Right.
Yeah, exactly. It's like when Dwight Schrute steers the ship in the office,
exactly. Absolutely.
So the other thing we want to talk about, in reference to this game specifically, is the health situation of the Cowboys. Is there anyone who's, 50-50 at this point? And then as a follow-up to that, a big part of health, when you talk about that breakdown is the recent COVID outbreak, of course, and the Ravens has us in the news. So aside from, regular injuries and things like that, maybe give us a little color on how Dallas is dealing with COVID, how they're doing with the protocols, kind of the culture around dealing with COVID that you've seen.
Well, they've been pretty good all season. If you notice, like a lot of the guys that have popped for COVID were early on in the season, and it was a lot of practice squad guys and guys not of clout, you know what I mean? So, and a lot of guys in the NFL have fallen under the radar based off of your position or your rank, The Cowboys have held it together pretty well. Dak Prescott went on record, I believe it was the first virtual meeting he did, and he said the healthiest team is going to win the Super Bowl this year. And he didn't mean like ACLs and MCLs. He meant like whoever is just compliant will be successful in the season. Unfortunately, the Dallas Cowboys got bit bad by the actual injury bug. But as far as on a COVID standpoint, they've been pretty good. Wednesday or yesterday, Aldon Smith missed practice with an illness. Unfortunately, we don't know anything more than that right now. But of course, I myself 2 weeks ago had the sniffles, and everybody's like, "Oh my god," like what could it be? So I think he'll be fine. On the injury front, as far as real injury concerned, Zach Martin's going to miss some time with a calf. Cam Irving's going to miss some time. He'll probably be out. He's closer than Zach Martin. The Dallas Cowboys offensive line is on their like 18th rotation. You know what I mean? So it's a very hard situation for Andy Dalton to be in. And, I think Andy Dalton, obviously touching on him because we were talking about COVID, he suffered from it. He got banged around, concussion, and then he cleared that protocol. And then, by the way, you have COVID now. Go back on that protocol. He's been through a lot. And I think that his offensive line isn't doing him any favors. Not a lot of time to throw the football. But on the injury front, that's all we're looking at right now. A couple guys, Anthony Brown banged up, cornerback, a little bit. I've got a safety that's banged up a little bit. But look, we're in week 13 of the NFL season. There's going to be guys with dings. You know what I mean? There's going to be guys that sit off on Wednesday practices because of veteran status. So there's going to be a lot of those. Don't do we're not the Patriots. We're not going to put like 54 guys on the injury list and have you guess on who's really okay.
Jeez whiz.
Yeah, no doubt. And the last time we saw the Cowboys was, of course, Thanksgiving, and the Washington football team, and more specifically Antonio Gibson, was running all up and down the field on that Cowboys defense. And then in preparing for this matchup, I looked at some of the numbers, and the defense struggles in almost every area: turnovers, stopping the run, stopping the pass. What happened? I know they've had a lot of tough injuries, but is that the main explanation of what happened to this defense?
Again, another coach that was kind of chased out of town was Rod Marinelli. You know what I mean? And his defensive scheme was something that I can't say worked, but at least, they weren't getting the doors blown off them like they are this year. You can't, at this point, and I've gone on record to say this, you can't blame scheme at this point. It's now a talent thing. As much as a lot of NFL fans or Cowboys fans specific, like Jalen Smith, or like these, the linebacking core, when you see Jalen Smith and Leighton Vander Esch on a depth chart, you're like, wow, who's going to run on us, and then you got the defensive line that before they shipped out Everson Griffin and Dontari Poe, and we had Gerald McCoy, we lost him early. The talent, I put in air quotes, the talent on paper was there. And just seems like no matter how complicated the scheme can get, unfortunately, I think Mike Nolan is going to be the scapegoat and the fall guy of all this, and he might be out quicker than McCarthy. You know what I mean? So they gotta do something. If the Cowboys, for whatever reason, completely just can't get a win for the rest of the year, and they finish either 3-13 or 4-12, something's got to give. You can't blame everything on COVID. You can't blame everything on lack of practice. Think about it. The NFLPA, there's like 2 practices a week if you think about it. You know what I mean? Like, how much prep can you actually get in those practices? I might be an old school guy myself, but like I remember when there was 2-a-days. You know what I mean? So like You don't see that anymore. So I think it's more talent and less scheme, but I think Mike Nolan is going to be, unfortunately, the fall guy in this offseason if things don't get righted within the last 6 weeks of the year. 4 weeks.
What about one thing that I believe translates throughout sports, no matter what it is from a defensive standpoint, a lot of it is about emphasis and effort, right? Like concentration, emphasis, and effort. So like I feel like McCarthy, he kind of reminds me of like the Mike D'Antoni of the NFL, right? Where like it's always been about the offense. The defense is kind of like, all right, you're over there, and you're on that side of the field. You do your thing, and I'm going to focus on what's most important. Do you think that plays into anything as far as like the lack of production? Is there a lack of accountability maybe with a new head coach? Do you think that has any sort of impact on the defense's downturn?
I think that Mike McCarthy had a lot on his plate right away. As soon as he gets in here, like, listen, not only are you here, but now you got to put a staff together. You have to put the team on the field. You got to, cut guys, sign guys. They keep banging it over our heads that it's a 24/7, 365 operation when it comes to talent acquisition. So again, I don't put it all on McCarthy right away because, again, he's got a lot of things he's got to deal with. But I think that personally, Mike Nolan's going to be held more accountable than Mike McCarthy. Mike McCarthy, if you look at those Packers seasons that he had, they were majority of them were successful. You know what I mean? And he had great defensive coordinators. If you think about it, if you think back, and I believe, if you think about the more popular ones, like Dom Capers, you know what I mean? Like those defenses, they were good. They were, I can't even say good. They were status quo. They didn't give up that 35 to 40 points a game like the Cowboys have this year alone.
All right.
It all depends on the staff that he puts around him. Unfortunately, I think he might have picked guys past their prime, guys that really haven't proved much. I mean, Mike Nolan was the linebackers coach of the Saints last year. So it's not, you know what I mean? Like he wasn't the defensive coordinator. He was the guy running the linebackers. You know what I mean? So he's been downgraded as a person, as a coach. A linebacker position, the coach of the linebackers isn't, I'm not saying that's a lesser operation than the coordinator, but there's a lot less responsibility. You go out there now in Dallas and now you have to run the entire defense. When you're right, Mike McCarthy, very offensive minded, probably says, Mike, I trust you, go do your thing. And unfortunately, he hasn't really done his thing at all.
Yeah, it kind of reminds me of the Rams situation when McVay was there and just handed the keys to the defense to Wade Phillips. And just let him kind of take over. Next guy I want to ask you about on the other side of the ball, Ezekiel Elliott. If he wasn't the most consistent player since he's been in the league, he was certainly in the conversation. This year, I think he's still having he's having an okay year when you consider all the the issues surrounding him. But what are the thoughts inside Dallas and inside the organization about Ezekiel Elliott? Is it maybe the down year? Are they blaming any of the down year? It's hard to call it a down year because he's still having an okay year, but are they blaming any of this on him, or is it all just around what's happening around him?
I think there's a lot of added pressure to an Ezekiel Elliott when a Dak Prescott goes down. If you remember a couple years ago when Zeke was suspended, it was all on Dak, and Dak had to carry that team, and it got, he got sacked like 54 times against the Falcons that week, and like he just basically earned a bunch of guys their paychecks for the next years. But when you look at Ezekiel Elliott, I you know what? It's one of those mysteries that you just haven't figured out yet for this year. I've never, he's fumbled more and lost more fumbles this year than he has in the first 3 years of his career.
Crazy.
Total, which is like out of control. He's putting that ball on the carpet way too many times. I think that unfortunately he thinks, and I think he's in his own head a little bit. You know how these players get. They get in their own heads. And unfortunately for him, he is right now deep in his own mind. And I think he's lost focus. I think also in the back of his mind, if you remember before he signed his big, massive contract, Tony Pollard showed a lot of flash and Jerry Jones went on record and said, Zeke, who? And I think that kind of, puts Zeke like, what's he talking about? I'm your $90 million running back. But I think now you have a guy who is talented behind you, similar to a Baltimore Ravens situation. Mark Ingram, I've been a big fan of his for a long time. But this J.K. Dobbins, man, he's going to be something. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
He's something special. And you got to know that Mark Ingram is probably like, oh, God, my job is dwindling right now. You know what I mean? So I think Zeke Elliott, a younger version of Mark Ingram, is feeling that pressure of being almost replaced. I mean, this is why a lot of, Twitter and social media platforms say, don't pay the running backs. Don't do it, and right now, if you look at it, like how many running backs have been paid and really kind of cashed in on the field? Not a lot, and like a Christian McCaffrey, he got hurt this year. So he's a anomaly and he doesn't really count towards that statistic, but like Zeke got paid and now he's got a lot of talent behind him. It could be a mixture of both, but it's something that the Cowboys are going to have to figure out relatively soon. Obviously, there's no let's cut Zeke or there's no let's trade Zeke. Zeke will be good. Ezekiel Elliott is, and I still believe this, a top 5 running back in the NFL. Mm-hmm. He'll get right. I just don't think, just like Emmitt Smith in the 90s when he was running behind that wall, that offensive line being knocked up and knocked around is just not a good scenario for Zeke.
Yeah, that's a tough one. I mean, most certainly because you don't know. You want to put the blame somewhere. There's pieces for everyone in that pie.
Plenty of fingers.
Yeah, absolutely. So you talked about the offensive line being banged up, and obviously Andy Dalton's been up and down due to injuries and COVID and things like that. But there's definitely a lot of star power in your wide receiver core.
Oh yeah.
And I think it's fair to say same with us as far as our DBs go.
Mhm.
And so how do you see this matchup turning out as far as the DBs versus the receivers? I'm really excited about it. How do you envision this turning out?
Well, I think if Andy Dalton can get rid of the ball fast like he did in Minnesota, things are going to develop. I'm not sure of the status of Jimmy Smith. I know he got hurt yesterday, so I'm not sure about him. But I truly think that we match up well. I believe the Ravens are a much harder defense than Minnesota, if you're asking to compare. I think if for the Cowboys to have any success in the passing game, you're going to get another big game out of CeeDee Lamb. He's going to have a big game, because Cooper, Amari Cooper is a great wide receiver in this league, but I feel like his body language and his mental, just like Zeke, once he checks out and once he feels like he's not being included or once he's not getting targets, he might disappear, and it stinks. And that was his MO coming in. So a lot of people were excited about his speed and his playmaking and his route running ability is unbelievable. But if he checks out mentally, it's going to be a long day for Andy Dalton. Dalton lost his the Cowboys lost their starting tight end. Dalton Schultz has come on a little bit. They're kind of deep at tight end. I kind of like all the guys they have. Whether it be Blake Bell or McKeon from Michigan, the undrafted free agent. But passing wise, I think it really all depends on the pass protection. I can't really analyze how many Cooper and all these guys can run amazing routes, but it's about getting the ball there and getting the ball out. And I think that's where the Ravens flourish. The Ravens did a great job this season in even mid-season on making sure that pass rush was pretty good. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. So Andy Dalton's going to have to really just not even 5-step. I'm talking 3-step drop. You're going to see a lot of slants. Unfortunately, I know we haven't touched on Kellen Moore, but I don't know what he's thinking sometimes. And I look, I like the guy, I like the person, but I think he's in over his head with this offense. And I think you're going to see a lot of screens, possible razzle dazzle. If they punt on fourth or they fake punt on 4th and 10, you probably won't ever hear from me again because I can't personally deal with that again. That was probably the most boneheaded call I've ever heard, but a lot of people blame Kellen Moore, and I'm just like, just so you know, and I don't know if you people know how NFL head coaches work. They hear everything.
Right.
They have to. They got to agree.
So and they will jump right in and put the stop to something they don't want to see. There's no doubt about that. Well, the Cowboys, this is as bad as it's looked at times for the Cowboys. When you look at the standings, somehow they are still just a game out of first place. It's absolute. What I just have a simple question. What in the world happened to that division?
I don't know. No, what happened was the New York Giants lost Saquon Barkley. The Washington football team are in a complete mess. New coach, new culture. Remember, the Washington football team went through a lot of drama over the offseason. Yeah. So, and I was one of those guys that kind of heard a lot of rumblings early. And I'm like, what is going on over there? So, that culture needs to change. And I'll say it right now, I don't think Carson Wentz is very good. So, I don't think that the Eagles were prepared to hear that or prepared to meet this season with that kind of comment. I understand they drafted Jalen Hurts, but they're probably looking at Jalen Hurts like a guy like a Taysom Hill, we'll throw him in a couple times. Now people are calling for Jalen Hurts to start. So every single team in the NFC East is in their own individual disarray. And that has led us to here where we're now in December and the Cowboys at 3-8 are one game out of first. The New York Giants are technically in first place via the tiebreaker over the Washington football team. And with their 4 wins, they are 4 wins less than the other least amount of wins for a division leader right now. 4 games.
Are the fans still hoping for a playoff push, or are they hoping for draft position?
Well, it's funny you mentioned that because I am at war with a lot of these people on Twitter where it's like, oh, I can't wait till we get Patrick Surtain Jr. at 4 or this, that, and the third at 5. And I'm like, you guys, you realize that this is the first year of almost biblical proportions that you can either A, win the division, or B, finish just one game out of the division lead and get a top 5 draft pick. So you are in the best of both worlds if you think about it. Like, hey, all right, let's try. And if we don't try, I mean, if we try and it doesn't work out, well, then you got a great draft pick. So I think there's a lot of guys on both sides of the fence right now. I, for one, I'm like, are you kidding me? Give me a division title, because you never know. And the Ravens are testaments to this. And, you know, a lot of organizations are testaments to this. Once you get in that dance, anything's possible. And I'm not saying the Cowboys can go on a run, but let's all remember this. Nick Foles won a Super Bowl. Okay. So we've seen crazier things.
No, absolutely. So, you know, in reference to this game specifically, one guy that we haven't brought up yet that I think is worth mentioning before, of course, we want to get your prediction, or, you know, your prediction about the game and the outcome. But Dez Bryant, 88, is
throwing up the X
in Baltimore. He's not doing any of that yet. But but
well, how poetic is this?
That's what I was going to ask you. Look, as I feel like he's just saving it for this game. So I have a couple questions about Dez. What do you think he has left in the tank? And the reason I ask that is because I think the Ravens, if they bring him in, they need to start, once we get some sort of offensive consistency, they need to do a better job at setting up some like packages for him, some red zone stuff for him. So I want to know what you think he has left in the tank. And then also, is he like beloved in Dallas? Do they not like him down there? You know, how do people feel about him?
I think, first of all, right away, I'll tell you right now, Dez Bryant has plenty left in the tank. I don't think that there was anybody on, like, there's 32 teams and there's a million players in the league. I don't think there's anybody that worked harder to get to where he's at right now than Dez Bryant. Wow. So we collectively, as Cowboys people, we will always love Dez Bryant. He was wronged in Dallas. That was a move that I don't understand. Yes, did he, you know, see some downsides in talent? A little bit. I'm not saying a lot. It was a little fall off. And when you know the league, as soon as you start to fall off, guess what? There's another 2 or 3 guys about to take your spot. So that's just the world we're living in the NFL. He's beloved in Dallas. We're all rooting for him in Baltimore. When he went to the Saints, I could be the first one to tell you that I was like, oh my God. Like, he went on to a team where you thought he was going to win a Super Bowl with the Saints. And I was like, oh, no, this is happening. Like, this is actually going to happen. This is going to be another DeMarcus Ware situation where he leaves and then goes and becomes more successful than he ever was. But I firmly believe that Dez Bryant has plenty left. I think he's motivated. And like I was saying, man, I think it's poetic. I was rooting for him to catch that first touchdown yesterday, but I knew if it didn't happen, that 120% that it's going to happen against the Dallas Cowboys.
If he doesn't get a target, I'm going to go crazy. Just give him one.
What did he get yesterday? What do you got? Three or four targets? Not a lot.
Yeah, not a lot. He fell down on the good look at one. He would have had.
He's still excited. He's very excited to be there. So it's like, yeah, he's got to get the nerves out. And I think he got that out. And unfortunately for us, we're going to see a Randy Moss type thing where he's going to get like 4 catches for 130 yards, 5 touchdowns. Like, it's just going to be.
I got him on the waiver wire just in case.
So did I.
I'm teetering with it, you know.
Wow. Well, yeah, he's going to be exciting for all Ravens fans that are left, because, man, there's not a whole lot at receiver right now for the Ravens. Him and Hollywood, it looks like it. But so, all right. So what do the Cowboys have to do to come out of this game with a win? And what is your actual prediction on what will happen?
I think, the Cowboys, for them to win the game, they have to win the time of possession battle. They have to keep their defense off the field, because, look, again, poetic that Lamar Jackson gets to come back and play the Cowboys. You know, it's amazing how all of a sudden, you know, Mark Ingram and J.K. Dobbins are back to play the Cowboys. So we are just catching all sorts of terrible breaks as far as the COVID and the injury list is concerned. I think the Cowboys have to keep the ball a lot. They have to ground and pound. They have to not give up on Zeke. They got to splash in some Tony Pollard. Andy Dalton's got to get rid of that ball a lot faster than he has been. The defense is up there with some of the best in the league, and I'll be the first one to admit that as far as the Baltimore Ravens are concerned. But that's it. They're going to have to just score, get themselves in a position to score almost every possession. Or every other possession, you know, not leave too many like 3 and outs or anything. They got to keep the pedal to the metal, and I think they will. I think this is going to be a little different than what people are predicting.
Hey, so are you a win for the Cowboys?
Yeah,
is that what we're hearing?
The way I see it is that the Cowboys played their best overall game all year against the Minnesota Vikings after their bye.
Mm-hmm.
This was another bye for them. This was a chance for them to get back. Now, keep in mind, unfortunately, and I knew him personally, Marcus Paul passed away. They were dealing with a lot of stuff emotionally last week. And like I said, I've met the man personally. I've worked with him. I worked with the New York Giants in 2007, and I've met him. Great guy, and my thoughts and prayers to his family. The Cowboys went through a lot last week. They got their rear ends handed to them on national TV again. They ruined my and everybody else's Thanksgiving. They've made it history to do that lately. But what they did was they rallied around after the bye week, and they won a football game, and they won it in comeback fashion. Do I think they have another comeback win in store? I think they do. I think that the Ravens they're gonna score touchdowns, and I think Des Bryant scores one of them. I think the Ravens are going to put up 21 points in the Dallas Cowboys, but I think the Cowboys are going to get down the field enough to kick a bunch of field goals, and they're going to win this game 23-21. Cowboys are going to win this game in Baltimore. Listen, you can check the Cowboys Wire. I am now 5-6 in my picks, so I'm not even above 500, but I did start winning games when I start betting against them. So I'm riding with my boys this week, and I think that Lamar Jackson's gonna do his thing. He's an electric quarterback. He has struggled at times this year, and I said this on Twitter not too long ago. I said a lot of these young quarterbacks, when they're rattled, they show it. That body language gets real apparent, like where they don't want to be there for that moment. We've seen it in Baker Mayfield. We've seen it in these guys where they're just like, and they just look defeated. If the Cowboys can rattle Lamar Jackson, maybe to force a turnover, which we haven't really been good at this year.
Yeah.
If they can pick off Lamar a couple times, stop the run, ever since they shipped out, Don Terry Poe and Everson Griffin, the Cowboys defense, and I can't count Thanksgiving. I mean, you have to, but you really can't. It's hard to. But I think they've been playing better overall defense, and I think the Cowboys have a shot. All right, here's the deal. If they think they have a shot to win this division, they have to win this game.
Yeah.
You don't lose your 9th game and then say, "Oh, that's all right, we'll win out." That's not happening. So right. I think the Cowboys come in inspired, 11 days off, and they pull off a game where people are going to be like, "Wow, I wasn't seeing that coming." And you guys could be the first ones to admit that this wasn't the Ravens team that you guys thought, coming in. So it's a different Ravens team. It's surely a different Cowboys team. It's going to be a battle, and I think if you're a gambling man, take the points. But other than that, I think the Cowboys win this game.
All right, so we want to extend you an offer really quick before we allow you to let people know what you're working on. So some folks that we have on, if they pick their team, we ask them how willing they are to stake their claim. Would you be willing, if you lose, to come on our show and sing a Christmas song?
Oh wow! Man. I didn't even know this question was coming. So
wow, hey, you know what's funny? Right before we started recording, this guy's like, "Don't worry, no surprises."
Oh yeah, that's right.
That's true. I did say that.
Way to go, James. I appreciate that, bro. But
man,
you can say
my angelic singing voice ain't what it used to be, but I'll at least do maybe the 12 days of Christmas, but not really good.
And it only has to be the first bar, the first 15 seconds.
Yeah, fine.
You never asked any other guests to do this, James. I wonder why.
He really picked me out. He said, "Oh, wow." He probably looked me up on Twitter and said, "Wow, this guy's an announcer. He does other things. He's probably multi-talented. He probably can sing a couple."
That's what it
is.
That's
right. Absolutely.
Awful.
That's right.
Awful. Hey, you know what? Listen, I'm a team player, and now, all right. Now, in the same token,
okay. I'll sing my heart off.
Okay,
I will sing.
As long as
look, all you gotta do, go.
He's a bad singer.
No, but go if you are really bored one day and want to laugh. Glenn and I, when we did the pod last year, the loser in our weekly pick'em had to sing the other person a love song.
It was so embarrassing. I sung Usher to him, and it.
Oh my gosh!
You had to try.
Did you let it burn?
Oh man,
I did, and it was. It was
so good.
It was awful. But anyway.
And then what's the movie from? What's the song from?
From Ghost.
What did you say?
I did Ghost.
From Ghost.
Yeah.
Oh, Unchained Melody.
There you go.
Oh my gosh, man.
Yeah, that's a good one.
Oh man. So yeah, it was great. But absolutely, we'll keep that in our back pocket.
I was just gonna say back myself into a corner on that one.
Well, Dave, why don't you let the fans and everybody else know where they can find you and what you're working on?
All right. Well, you can find me at Dave Sturchio on Twitter. I do contribute and write for the Cowboys Wire. Typically, I get on there and write as much as I can. I do a lot of their injury reports. I also host the Pick'em segments. So every time you see a Cowboys Wire article that drops where it's the staff picks, I'm usually the one orchestrating that. But my baby right now is the Jersey Boys podcast. Being from New Jersey, along with my co-host Brett Ernst, who you could see on Cobra Kai. I don't know if you guys are fans of that show on Netflix. Cool. So he's on that. Another co-host of mine is his brother Keith. We call him America's Fan. He's like the Rain Man of the group. He's like ridiculous with the stats. Like, it's just unbelievable. He could tell you like it's funny. He he told me the other day, he's like, the Cowboys, they have to be the first team in history to play every single day of the week. And I said, nah, they probably didn't play on Friday. He's like, oh no, they did. 1999 against the Saints. I'm like, Jesus Christ. I'm like, wow, all right. Wow, so he called me out on that. But check that stat. It might be the Cowboys might be the only team in NFL history to play on every single day of the week with a Tuesday game. But yeah, Jersey Boys podcast. It's at Jersey Boys Pod on Twitter. But it's like I said, it's self-explanatory. It's three guys that grew up in New Jersey, basically enemy territory, to root for America's team. We have the Giants right there, 15 minutes from Giant Stadium, and then we're right down the turnpike to go to Philly. So enemy territory. It's a comedic podcast. We have a lot of fun with it every week. We did a fantasy football draft. We did a whole bunch of stuff. So you can check us out on iTunes or wherever you get your podcasts. We're available there.
Awesome, man. Well, thanks again. We'll be sure to put some links in the description below so you guys be on the lookout for that. And we'll talk to you soon, man.
Yeah, man. Thank you guys for having me on. And I would say good luck, but I would not mean that at all. So.
Thanks,
Appreciate
Dave.
that.